Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First question, as I always ask, can I be heard? And please put your answers in live stream Q&A. That's where we have everything taking place today. This is an old-fashioned live stream, as the way I used to do them, where Patreon supporters, everybody can watch, but Patreon supporters are the ones actually in the conversation. And I have it all in the description, by the way, as to how to do that. But can you please put it in live stream Q&A as to whether or not I can be heard? And it looks like we have Timothy jumping in. Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Darth, and thanks, Timothy. Appreciate it. So, good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. I tried to do this, in the morning here to kind of accommodate people in Australia, but once again, I know that it's really not a great time. So, Timothy, thanks very much for showing up today, and anybody else who shows up from the land down under. And anybody on the West Coast who gets up at 6 in the morning or 6:30 or whatever time it is right now. So we had a vote amongst our supporters as to what topic we are going to be covering today. This is also the way we used to do things for a really long time, and it was a really, really close vote. As a matter of fact, it was decided by one vote, and we're going to be discussing terraforming Mars, or rather, the necessity of terraforming Mars. Is this something that we have to do in order to colonize the planet in the long run? I mean, if we're going to go to Mars forever, and establish it as a permanent second home for the human species, is terraforming something that needs to be done? The scientific majority seems to think that, they definitely think that terraforming is either impossible with today's technology, or that it's going to take thousands, if not millions of years with today's technology, and so it's just not realistic. I happen to disagree with that. I released a video with a lot of articles from other people who disagree with that. It's not just me, who think that it could be done in a few centuries, not, thousands and thousands of years, but still it's going to be a huge undertaking, a monumental undertaking. And it's really going to consume a lot of the colony's resources, energy, everything in order to make this work. All that having been said, is it worth it? Is it something that, should be done? Or can we survive on Mars for thousands of years without it, continuously in pressurized life support environments, pretty much forever? Is that something that is really viable for the human species in the long run? So that is the focus of our conversation for the next hour or so. My son is here, so I have to limit time, unfortunately. Not unfortunate that he's here, though. So like I say, I'm just limiting time. So here we go. I'd be very interested to hear what people's opinions are, what you think about it. How would we terraform Mars? I've already talked a lot about this in the past. Cyanobacteria being one method that a lot of people haven't discussed. There isn't enough CO2 bound into Mars. There isn't enough in the regolith, the poles, and the entire planet combined, at least by our estimates, to create an atmosphere. So that being the case, how do we do it? Do we, cyanobacteria is one thing that was talked about. We release a lot of bacteria that can survive in the Martian environment, and it's going to release a lot of CO2 if it has the necessary nutrients. Orbiting mirrors, says Timothy, to raise temperature. Yeah, the orbiting mirrors to melt the ice caps, definitely a one method. I think it's going to take a whole bunch of different approaches really simultaneously in order to make that happen. We're talking colossal mirrors here at, best estimate, maybe 100 kilometers in diameter at least, in order to accomplish something like this. However, there are some new types of fabrics, reflective fabrics, that are being developed by NASA right now that could accomplish that with a minimal amount of weight, minimal amount of volume. And if you had 1,000 starships doing the job, it actually would take them 1 to 2 years, something like that, the last time I did my calculations on it anyway, about 1 to 2 years to deploy a 100-kilometer in diameter mirror, assuming that you had the necessary materials to do so with this new reflective fabric. So yeah, it's, in my opinion, it's way better than melting the ice caps with nukes. I am not a big fan of really radical solutions, blowing the hell out of a planet in order to make it livable. We still don't know enough about Mars to start dropping, gigantic nuclear weapons. And it would take huge nuclear weapons to melt the ice caps. I'm just not a fan of doing that to a planet that we don't understand, and we don't know what kind of consequences might result from bombs that big. Darth said, I'm partial to Zubrin's method of just thickening the atmosphere and letting it heat or melt things in due course. Of course, it has the problem that if we do thicken the atmosphere, Mars may not have the gravity and magnetics to retain it, so it needs to be a replenishment plan. That is true. One of the things that Zubrin, I don't know how long ago Zubrin came up with this, but there just isn't enough CO2, at least by NASA's last estimates a couple of years ago. There isn't enough CO2 or other greenhouse gases bound into the Martian regolith and the ice caps and everything else that even if you did warm the planet and evaporated all the CO2, it wouldn't be enough, not even close to enough. So we need to actually produce more CO2 than currently exists on Mars, even bound into the regolith. That's what makes this project such a huge undertaking. Magnetosphere simulating satellites. Boy, that's an interesting idea. Try to simulate a magnetosphere so that you don't lose the atmosphere. That's something that Darth just pointed out, is that, you build the atmosphere and you're going to eventually lose it, as Mars did in the past. The thing that's working in our advantage is if we do build an atmosphere, it's going to take millions of years for the solar wind to strip it away as it did in the past. So replenishing it is something that should be a fairly easy task, assuming that we have the ability to create the atmosphere in the first place. Then we can probably maintain it. Now, of course, if our civilization collapses, then the atmosphere will probably eventually be stripped away again, but at that point, we probably won't care. Redirecting asteroids into Mars, says Phil James. That's been talked about an awful lot. I am in favor of smaller asteroids, like, ones that are going to create 10 to 20 megaton level explosions directed in a specific area of Mars, a long way from where our colony is. Comets would be, the best option, or C-class asteroids, but comets are our best option, something that's made almost entirely out of ice, water ice and frozen CO2, etc. That's our best bet, is to redirect comets if we can. I'm not in favor of redirecting gigantic asteroids and that sort of thing. Once again, it goes back to we don't know what's going to happen to Mars if we do things like that. I mean, we've seen that huge things have impacted the planet in the past, but is it geologically dead? Would Olympus Mons start to erupt if if we did something like that? It's kind of hard to say, because there is evidence of magma lakes beneath the surface. Just how many there are, where they are, what might happen. I don't like messing around with a planet that might fight back. But something that's smaller, something that produces more of a, a moderate-sized nuclear explosion, as long as it's a long ways away, I think that's a very good idea. I like that. Okay. So that's just, we need to be doing all of these things, introduce bacteria that produce CO2. As a matter of fact, I personally believe that that bacteria is already there. We just need to help it thrive. Dr. Levin, pointed out that all of the bombardment of cosmic rays over the millennia should have stripped away the extra oxygen atom in the Martian atmosphere. We should have carbon monoxide there, not carbon dioxide. So there must be something replenishing the CO2, he argues. If that is indeed the case, then we just take whatever, organisms that are currently there and help them to thrive, help them to, supercharge these organisms, assuming that they're not dangerous to us, and have them produce more CO2. Like I say, the way around, there's not enough CO2 on Mars in order to create an atmosphere. Well, produce more. We're very good as a species, actually, at producing lots of greenhouse gas. We've proven that. So why can't we do it on Mars, where the environment is actually a lot smaller than the climate is here? What about site selection for initial colonies? Valles versus Hellas discussion. Yeah, I am still a big fan of the Valles Marineris. One of the reasons I like that idea, one of many, is the fact that perhaps you could terraform a small portion of the Martian surface, perhaps with some sort of tent, or a tent manufactured out of an silica aerogel substance, over one section of the valley that is easily large enough to accommodate 1 million people, if not many millions of people. You'd have to have some sort of self-sealing substance, however, because meteors and things are going to come through and poke holes through that. It would need to be like self-sealing fuel tanks on aircraft, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm still in favor of colonizing the Valles Marineris for a lot of different reasons. Equatorial, warmer, denser atmosphere, and yeah, I think that we can isolate a region of the valley and terraform it. And it could start out smaller too. We could isolate regions of the Noctis labyrinthus that has all of these narrow valleys, seal those off perhaps, for experiments. Plus that region of the Valles Marineris, you could actually establish multiple colonies in all the different valleys and isolate them from each other, so that if there was some sort of meteor impact, it would only take out a certain percentage of the colony rather than the whole thing. So there's another possibility. We have people typing. And, we also need to get to the point that, is it worth it? Could we survive in the long run by just, living in a pressurized dome and a pressurized life support environment forever? Because there are some places in the solar system where that's going to be necessary. For example, we can't terraform Callisto. It's not really possible. It's just too small of a moon. Not with an atmosphere that we could breathe anyway. Mimi says, I think the first generation to be born on Mars will consider themselves Martians and will prefer to modify their culture to suit the environment rather than the Herculean task of modifying the planet. They'll end up with enclosed environments and frequent normal excursions outside using environmental suits. Yeah. That is an interesting point. If you're born into that kind of environment, if you're born into a pressurized life support environment, and then you're the second generation, you're the third, you're the fourth, you're the fifth generation of people that are born into this kind of environment, and you've got your great grandparents talking about, remember back on Earth we had, and all that. To them, it's meaningless. You can't go to Earth anyway because you were born into an environment with 1/3 gravity. So unless we come up with really breakthrough medical technology to compensate for that, going to Earth for Martians is going to be a very, very difficult task, if not impossible, at least for a long time. So you're right, they may just adapt to that. Living inside of insulated ice tunnels on Callisto, says Alien Zookeeper. That's true. And again, that goes down to the terraforming smaller parts of the planet rather than, terraforming the whole, well, in this case, a moon, obviously, but still, and Callisto has a much, lower gravity than Mars, less than 50%, I believe. So, yeah, it's so there's even further adaptation at that point, less radical than going from Earth to Callisto. A lot of people talk about Titan as being a better target and that sort of thing, but one thing that we don't keep in mind is the fact that gravity wise, going to Titan as opposed to Mars is a huge change in gravity for a human being. It's like living on the moon, actually a little bit worse. Even though Titan is so big, its gravity pull is not what the moon's is, not quite. So, that is a really radical change in gravity, and who knows what kind of impact that would have on a human being. Whereas humans that have evolved or adapted to live in 1/3 gravity might have an easier time with it. And again, all of this is speculation. All of it is. So yeah, it's difficult to say. But yeah, that's kind of the question. By the way, I have no idea how many people are watching. I can't see. Doing this the old-fashioned way, I can't see the number ticker there or anything like that. But if you're watching, please like, please subscribe. And thank you for tuning in. Those of you who are not supporters, not on Discord and such, and still watching, thank you. I'm very grateful and very honored that you tuned in. And if you want to become part of this, it's easy. Just go to the description. It's $3 a month. And I'm going to be doing these more frequently now in the future. I got pulled into the whole super chat world for a little while, and I'm going to keep doing those. But at the same time, I'm going to be doing these two to demonstrate my appreciation to Patreon supporters. Okay, enough of that. We have people typing, definitely. We have people participating. So 3 at the same time, actually, so that's good. So in the meantime, I'll just keep talking. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn, to be honest. Yeah, I think the future generations of Martians might, find just living inside a pressurized environment as being perfectly natural. And then, your little chance to go out on your field trip and in your environmental suits to see the wonders of Mars, which is, again, another reason why we need to put the colony in an interesting part of the planet. We put it out, way the hell out on some plain somewhere with nothing, within thousands of kilometers. It's going to be so much more difficult for us to enjoy the wonders of this planet. That was one of the reasons why I was so disappointed to see Perseverance set down where it did, even though I think it's going to do some fascinating science. When it was doing that descent and they were counting down the kilometers, 4 kilometers, 3 kilometers, if it had been landing in the Valles Marineris, the camera could have panned and you would have seen cliffs rising up on, to however far away they were, but rising up, kilometers and kilometers above the lander as it was descending. Can you imagine how incredible that would have looked? And we have seen from Perseverance's landing process that we can set rovers down pretty precisely now. And there's lots of good landing spots that are 9 kilometers by 9 kilometers in size inside the Valles Marineris. It was very thoroughly researched, actually, when there were certain people making a case to put a rover there. We need to put our colony someplace that's going to be exciting, someplace that's going to take advantage of, of the magnificence of this alien world. Venus cloud cities, remote surface mining and refining, exporting carbon and nitrogen with mass drivers. That's an interesting idea, Alien Zookeeper. Yeah, I mean, one of the big advantages of going to Venus, obviously, is there isn't going to be a gravity issue. Venus's gravity is nearly that of Earth. And so you're not going to have those kinds of problems. There's going to be a lot of other problems. For example, Venus has very, very, very little water. And, what water it has is bound into sulfuric acid. So it's going to be really difficult to maintain any kind of appreciable population there, in my opinion. But at the same time, that's some neat ideas. Exporting the carbon and nitrogen using mass drivers to do it, so you don't have to use fuel, you don't have to use spacecraft. That's a really neat idea. Okay, Rickard says apparently there's been revealed hypersonic projectile propulsion systems with Mach 6 plus with no moving parts. Tim Dodd apparently said that there is a hybrid rocket that contained an efficient high ISP jet engine, 10,000 seconds worth of ISP in atmosphere, changing to rocket engine propulsion. Could they couple hypersonic engines in that? I don't know anything about that. I think that that's fascinating. I think that that would be a very intriguing thing to look into. Absolutely. Any kind of new engine that allows us to accomplish things that we can't do now is going to be vital if we're going to maintain a colony any place else in the solar system. Anything that allows us to get to other planets, other moons more efficiently, more swiftly, it's just going to be better. It's clear that NASA intends to use nuclear engines on the trip to Mars, nuclear thermal, nuclear electric, something like that. But all the hallmarks are there, all the development, all the changes in treaties, all the changes in directives, etc. It's obvious that they want to get to Mars in about 3 months instead of 6 to minimize the impact of microgravity on the astronauts and also cosmic rays, etc. So I don't think they're going to go until they have a viable nuclear engine. Dart says, would Valis be something like a phase 2 target after we get an initial surface colony going based on the ease of access? Maybe so. Maybe so. Of course, one of the drawbacks to that is the people who set up Colony A, they better be some really dedicated people because they're going to be living under very, very harsh conditions without a hell of a lot to make up for it. The wonder of going to another planet is fantastic. But if I was one of those colonists, I would be losing my mind to go to see the most fantastic things that are on that planet. Now, there is, in the region where Elon is looking at, there is actually one volcano, not Olympus Mons, and I'm forgetting its name, but it's fairly close to that region. It's actually, nobody talks about it, and it looks small on a map, but it's actually colossal. It's huge. It's like twice the height of Everest or something like that. That would be pretty cool, and that's not very far away. So yeah, I just think a colony location that takes advantage of the magnificence, the alien beauty of this planet is something that's going to make it easier psychologically for humans to go there. Otherwise, it's just going to be like going to Antarctica, and so few people. That's the argument that's always made. People seldom, every now and then they do. There are a few people who do decide to stay in Antarctica and live there permanently, get married there, etc. But it is really rare. So I just think that, something fantastic, a magnificent place to live on the planet is going to be a big, big positive thing for any Martian colony. Aerothermal power for, this is from Alien Zookeeper, thermal power for energy and mine permafrost. Tunnels and domes over valleys, plus habitats built into Phobos and Deimos. Try everything. And yeah, that is the key, Alien Zookeeper. Try everything. We definitely need to be exploring every different option when it comes to, terraforming, if we try it, or if not, just surviving in general. We need to not put all our eggs into one basket. Definitely need to explore all these options. And yeah, a base on Phobos and Deimos is going to make a huge amount of difference in so many different ways. I'm not going to go off on a tangent on that one. I've made a number of videos about it, although it might be time. Pavonis Mons, no, Pavonis Mons, if I remember correctly, is one of the the three Tharsis volcanoes. It's actually more west, closer to where the Viking landers set down. So anyway, but it's not in the Tharsis region. It's actually a different region, fairly close to where Elon's looking to set down. And it's just, it looks little. It looks like a little bitty volcano on the map, but it's actually colossal in height. Oh, hello. People Ma just became a Patreon. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you doing that. It makes all the difference in the world to me, and thank you very much for joining. Okay, so, looking forward to your participation here. This is going to be great. Okay, Mimi says, do you think there'll be a boring company Hyperloop connecting colonies? Yes, I do. That just makes way too much sense. Now, it's a huge engineering undertaking. It takes a lot of engineering in order to create something like that. But at the same time, it just makes way too much sense to do that. Plus, those kinds of tunnels, if you were to, pressurize them in an emergency situation, there would be a good bomb shelter, so to speak, if a large meteor were coming or something. That's another thing, is that Mars is going to need a really, really good asteroid deflection plan, better than what Earth is going to require, because anything that comes down that hits anywhere near the colony can cause damage to the life support, and that's curtains. So getting rid of any halfway sizable meteor or asteroid, or just deflecting it a little bit to where it hits Mars in a different part of the planet, is going to be critical. And Timothy said if Musk has a say, and of course he will. I mean, Elon is the only one with the money, the power, the influence, etc., at least currently. Although the UAE wants to colonize Mars too, and they've got a lot of money also. But he's the only one who really wants to do this, has the vision to do it, the drive and the money. So he's going to be heavily, heavily involved in whatever happens there. Elysium. I'm trying to make sure if I got a reference to that. If you're referring to the movie Alien Zookeeper or something else. The Elysium region. Yeah. Just have a look. At some point, I'll put it in the description once I get a chance to look it up. All right, heck. Give me a minute. This is starting to drive me crazy now. I'm going to find it real quick because it's not hard to find. Map Mars. We'll find it. And sorry to hold us up here, but at the same time, this is bothering me, and a lot of people don't know about this place, and it is incredibly cool. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry, you're right. Elysium Mons. Thank you. You're right. That's exactly what it is. Sorry, I was thinking about the movie. So look that up, but Elysium Mons is something that almost nobody talks about. It's not one of the Tharsis volcanoes. And I just looked it up because I was interested in whatever happened to be in that region. And it is 13.9 kilometers above the plane where it's located. And I'm just looking at it here. And 16 total kilometers in elevation. It's huge. It's a huge volcano. And it's actually right in the region of where Elon is looking to set up his colony. So that could be kind of cool. What happens when an organization other than SpaceX arrives at Mars independently, such as the Chinese? How tense does that become? It could become really tense. It depends on who it is. Sorry. The key is survival, obviously. I mean, the need to cooperate in order to survive is going to be so much more important on Mars than it's going to be any place else. And so it's in everybody's interest. Like I say, if there's conflict on Mars, if they decide to open up on each other, it's pretty much mutually assured destruction. It's very easy to destroy each other's life support systems. So, it'd just be so risky to do something like that. Why would you? Seems to me that cooperation makes a whole lot more sense for long-term survival. And yeah, the Chinese might have a different agenda, but separated from their home country by tens of millions of kilometers, they might have a change of heart. They might start looking at things a little bit differently. Think a little less like the People's Republic of China and instead think like Martians, like everybody else on the planet. Kind of hard to say. Ricker says probably could drill on Mars, explore potentials for geothermal energy. Otherwise, habitats could stay warm with subsurface heat pump loops somehow. Wonderful, boring company initial prime mission before the hyperloop stuff. Yeah, heating these places is going to be one of the key things if we don't terraform. It's always going to require artificial heat. And once again, equatorial locations make more sense because they, are a lot warmer. Valles Marineris averages from 50 to 80 degrees warmer than the rest of the planet in terms of the overall average of the planet. So, artificial heat is going to be a very, very key thing to keep in mind if we are going to be doing this for the long term. That's going to, just life support in general is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest consideration. And then, of course, food and all of that, long-term psychiatric well-being of the colonists, so many things. And then also, what about people who come to visit? And then go back and that sort of thing. How is that accommodated, especially, given the impact of the gravity that's going to have on them? That's another reason, by the way, that I think we're going to need better engines before we're going to be looking at, people, tourists or whatever, coming to Mars and then going back. The impact on their bodies is going to be far too radical with conventional chemical engines than it's going to be if they were to take a nuclear rocket and then take one back, stay on Mars for a month or two and then go back, or go back using a different launch window, using Venus as a slingshot approach. That's another way to shorten your stay on Mars. So anyway, let's keep it going. And by the way, it was a 1 vote difference in terms of topics, so we can talk about engines too if we want to. In terms of is the other topic that was 1 vote different is, are improved engines going to be a necessity if we're going to establish a colony there? Can we do it with Raptors alone, for the long term, or are we going to need to graduate to a better class of engine? We can definitely talk about that as well. So feel free. Like I say, this is all open up. Phil James making a contribution. Thank you very much. And like I say, sometimes as folks in the Patreon group are thinking of questions to ask, there can be moments where it's just me talking during these things. But at the same time, when I have these chats going by, I miss so much. There's so much I can't keep up with. So sometimes people ask questions. Well, a lot of times people ask questions and I have no idea. It goes blowing right by me. So there's positives and negatives to either approach. But I'll be doing both in the future, definitely. And once again, everybody who's tuned in, thank you very much for doing that. Just to watch. By the way, this will be ad-free, the recorded version as well. My recent videos have done quite well, and anytime I have that, the live streams will be ad-free, even the recorded version. So anyway, so I'll keep going on this. So, like I say, I have mixed feelings about the whole, terraforming, the necessity of the terraforming thing. I do not have mixed feelings about improved engines. I think that and I've said this over and over again, we need to graduate away from chemical engines. We need to get away from technology that essentially has remained unchanged since the Middle Ages when the Chinese first started experimenting with rockets. I mean, it's improved, the methods, it's more efficient, that sort of thing, but the principle is still the same. and we've got to do better. Is there any discussion about change in the political environment that would revive work on nuclear thermal rockets? We've had fully developed technologies in the 60s, chose not to use them. Hope we go back on that. Yeah, Darth, we are going back on that. There have been a number of directives issued by the U.S. government saying that the whole notion of nuclear weapons in space does not include nuclear engines in space. That decision has pretty much been made at this point, and work is being there are a number of companies actually that are working very hard on nuclear thermal propulsion, nuclear electric propulsion. Plus, there's this idea of a plasma engine that one person came up with recently, which would make it even faster, like 30 days. If you get to Mars in 30 days, it takes care of a lot of problems, a lot of issues. A long-running engine would just involve a bunch of politicians expelling the hot air that they endlessly generate out of a nozzle. Yeah, let's harness Congress. Let's harness all the hot air that comes out of there, or whatever political organization you happen to have in your country. I'm sure we could do the same thing in Parliament. I have, by the way, sat in on Parliament sessions a number of times, and boy, those guys love to yell at each other. It's different than the U.S. Congress. There's no decorum in terms of shouting at each other there. It was very entertaining. I loved it, actually. It was, I don't know, there's just something really spontaneous about these people yelling at each other. So anyway, and something very honest, it just seemed to me. Okay, so once a moon base is established, says Phil James, that would make it easier to develop engines. Well, yeah, I mean, if we use fusion engines, utilizing hydrogen, or rather helium-3, that sort of thing, yeah, and we keep saying that it's just around the corner, we're not very far away from that, etc. We're so close, blah blah blah. So yeah, we'll get there. And the moon has so many advantages to offer the human species besides just that. Obviously, there's so many things we can get from the moon, and so much easier than getting it here on Earth once we're established on the moon. And the Starship can change all of that, obviously, with a low cost per kilogram. But hell, I mean, the cost per kilogram has dropped radically as it is, so it's hard to say. Oh yeah, and by the way, I've got it's back, a little piece of SN9. So, boy, I'll tell you, I wish I'd been able to stay long enough to see SN10, and because there's got to be debris all over the place there, and people just picking around looking for it. It is amazing to me that SpaceX doesn't have a problem with this, but at the same time, I think they probably do get enough of the debris to get an idea of what they're looking at, and to get a post-mortem on the SN. So politicians create a lot of fertilizer too, says me. Yeah, all kinds of views for that. Wow, I just export politicians to Mars. Think of the possibilities. It would be wonderful. By the way, yet another coffee cup, Mars coffee cup from the Houston, the Johnson Space Center there in Houston. That's very cool, and a huge mug too. Lots of coffee, which I'm always a big fan of. We have lots of people typing right now, so that's very good. Once again, the topic today, and we're kind of diversified it a little bit. Is terraforming necessary, and also are advanced engines going to be necessary to maintain a colony on Mars? Tell Elon you're holding that piece of SN10. He can have it back if he wants. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have. I'll tell you, the huge amount of SN8 and SN9 that this guy who gave this to me had. It was incredible, all the debris that this dude had. Any of you guys are interested in seeing that? It's in my Boca Chica video that I put out. The scenes from Boca Chica at night and stuff like that. That particular video, if you're interested in seeing all those pieces that were gathered up, that's in that video. So Okay, let's see here. Oh yeah. By the way, thank you for that reminder on that. A shout out to Timothy Albiz and his channel. And now I'm having a problem. I can't remember the name of it. What is wrong with me? Oh dear Lord, I am so sorry, guys. Somebody type it so I can remember. And then Mars Embassy. Both of them have YouTube channels, and both of them are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and both of them are fantastic. Yeah, somebody to Unhinged Space. Thank you. Unhinged Space is Timothy's channel, and it's really good. It's got some really informative things about space policy, space flight, Mars, etc. He's coming out with some great stuff, and he edits things way better than I do too. So anyway, and then Mars Embassy go there. This is a fellow who's in Boca Chica and needs our help. He's trying to stay in Boca Chica and trying to get his channel to 1,000 subscribers so he can monetize, because he's doing the whole Uber thing, but you don't make any money on Uber while you're sitting for hours waiting for a launch. That doesn't happen, so we're trying to get both of these channels to 1,000 if we can. Plus they produce really good content. Mars Embassy puts out unique and very cool footage of the launches of things happening with and also he caught the Boston Dynamics Zeus walking around after the explosion. He went to the launch site and got a good shot of Zeus walking around the site. So he's got some really cool stuff on his channel. Go there and subscribe. Okay, and please like and subscribe here too, by the way. Okay, let's keep it going. Terraforming seems a little too ambitious. Why not high tensile fabric structures, which derives its strengths from positive pressure, something already fairly well understood structurally and used on Earth. Ideally, the fabric would be translucent or transparent. The risk of puncture would not generally be an issue. They're not like balloons. It would have high tearing resistance. We just need to be autonomously patched so you don't lose too much artificial atmosphere. That's really good, Dan. I actually kind of suggested that in terms of terraforming a smaller part of Mars, say a section of the Valles Marineris or something, kind of seal it off with something like that. So I like that idea. And then you can walk outside, without a suit. It's not the whole planet, but it's a big enough region of the planet to where, living becomes much more natural. So yeah, that's a very positive way of approaching it. Darth says, I enjoyed the Axiom interview. Thank you. By the way, if you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's going to be the first commercial space station that goes up. I am confident of that because they've got great people working on it. Number one, a lot of ex-NASA people. They have a lot of very rich people backing the project. I don't think they need government assistance to make this work, and they've already raised hundreds of millions of dollars for it. And it's only a $2.5 billion station, which is a lot more doable financially than some of the other plans that are out there. I think these guys are definitely going to have the first commercial station. And incidentally, they don't intend to stop with just one small station. They're going to keep expanding, building it bigger and bigger until they have artificial gravity, until they have a big rotating station. But it's a long-term plan. We're talking like half a century is what the plan is, which is realistic. Again, we're not going to put up, a big rotating station in 10 years. It's just not going to happen. It's unless Jeff Bezos gets behind it and throws $50 billion at it or something like that. It's just going to be too expensive to do something like that in the short run. Okay, so but thanks. I'm glad that I'm glad you enjoyed the interview. And yeah, they definitely picked a great person. In a perfect world, who would I want to interview next? I would like to interview somebody over at Sierra Nevada. I would be very interested to hear what they've got cooking right now. Haven't heard anything from them aside from the delay in the Dream Chaser until 2022 because of COVID, because they followed the the legal restrictions on their factory floor, et cetera, as far as COVID is concerned. So they won't be launching it until 2022, which really breaks my heart. But at the same time, I'm excited to see what else they have in the works. And by the way, that is a company that is also run by billionaires, two billionaires to be exact, and they definitely have revenue behind that organization. So certainly something to keep in mind. Okay, let's see here. You're welcome, Timothy, by the way. Okay. When discussing Mars colonization, I always hear people worried about radiation with the lack of a magnetic field. I heard a NASA study proposing a 1 to 2 Tesla magnet in a Lagrange point powered by solar panels that would deflect solar radiation. It can be done. But at the same time, as I've stated a lot of times, we are really, the whole radiation thing is overblown. And that's based on readings that were taken by the Curiosity rover, which really surprised, and a lot of readings were taken, by the way, a big surprise to people, that the radiation on the surface of Mars is far lower than in orbit, that little bit of atmosphere makes a huge difference in terms of the amount of radiation on the surface. It's roughly the same as the amount of rads that somebody on the ISS takes. It's really not as awful as we think. Now doing something about it is certainly going to be a good thing, something we should do. But at the same time, it's not a game, it's not a game changer. It's not a showstopper, so to speak, that everybody talks about it. It just isn't. You could stand unprotected on the surface of Mars for 5 years and still not exceed the NASA's recommended, total lifetime radiation exposure. 5 years of just standing unprotected, and you wouldn't be unprotected. You'd be living in a habitat that's radiation resistant, coming out for a few hours at a time, so you could certainly live your entire life on Mars and probably not, experience the disaster of radiation sickness. It's just not enough radiation to create that. Now, an increased chance of cancer, perhaps. Maybe about as bad as if you were a smoker. Maybe it would be that bad. But we're not even sure about that. It's certainly not as bad as we think it is, or as a lot of people say that it is. And there's a look up, by the way, just Google radiation map on Mars, and it will show how many REMs per year that you would take in different regions of the planet. There are some regions that are really dangerous, like the top of Olympus Mons. That's a bad place because there's almost no atmosphere there. But in other regions, not so bad at all. Dan says you need drastic improvements in 3D printing fabrication for high tensile, large dimension sheeting, something that seems achievable in 10 years. Yes, I agree, Dan, especially if we're talking about manufacturing that stuff in microgravity. Another thing that Axiom is working on. Again, if you haven't seen the interview, check it out, because that's what the guy I interviewed, Christian Mender over there, that is his field of specialty, is microgravity manufacturing and medical research. He was all kinds of things he talked about that we can do in microgravity that we can't do on Earth, and manufacturing the kind of stuff that we're talking about in microgravity is so much easier. Gravity really screws up a lot of things, especially if you're talking about very, very complicated, very delicate kinds of fabrics, or just biological materials, stem cells. All of those things are negatively impacted by gravity and so much easier to work with in microgravity. Pizza on Mars would be made with Vallis marinara sauce. Yes, I'm sure somebody's going to come up with that. The first pizza restaurant on Mars will be Vallis marinara pizza. Somebody needs to trademark that. Okay. How about a Prozac Wednesdays where we momentarily pause the angry and focus on the happy things happening in spaceflight access? That could be followed by heavy metal Thursdays for an airing of grievances. That's a great idea, Darth. I like that a lot. Maybe I could talk, or maybe I can do it in my videos. I can have a happy moment and then a really pissed off moment or something like that. It's hard to say, but and by the way, guys, I'm coming out with a video soon where I'm gonna take the gloves off on one particular issue, which is probably gonna make some people mad. And I'm not going after SpaceX, just so you know, but I'm going after somebody else that probably is not gonna make me very popular in some ways. I'm not gonna give it away, but spoilers, I'm gonna be doing something that might be a little controversial, but at the same time, I think it needs to be done. Please like, please subscribe, by the way, and stay tuned. Got some interesting things coming. It won't be the next video, but probably the one after it. Where did my theme music come from? It actually came from my editing software. It was just, freeware on my editing software. That's all it was, and I don't even know who the composers are or anything. One thing I know is that I did pay for it. Each individual song, actually, I had to pay for it in order to use it. So it was either that or go through ads. It was weird. You click on the song and then it says you have to watch this ad in order to use a song. I was like, forget it, I'll just buy it. So you had to pay for the rights to use it. The Axiom station would be an ideal place to manufacture high tensile materials. Yeah, it does. You're right, Starliner. It does. Starliner glitch. I need to use your entire. Otherwise, it sounds like I'm praising Starliner. We definitely need that kind of station in order to manufacture these sorts of things. To do the things that, to terraform Mars, one of the big things is going to be, as people have talked about a lot, is the silica aerogel types of materials. These are a lot easier to manufacture in microgravity, and you can make higher quality stuff too. Politicians will contaminate Mars. Do we really want to do that, says Jade Finch? Yeah, that's a good point. I think Elon has a good idea there where we have a direct democracy to make these decisions. Instead of having elected representatives, instead of having any other way of doing things, we do it with a direct democracy and put a decision in front of people. Does our colony do this or that? Everybody vote now. And that's a daily thing, a daily responsibility for every colonist. You participate in a direct democracy. It has been done before, once in Athens, and it had its problems. But at the same time, it did work. Of course, it was only males and only property owners, but still, it was a direct democracy of people making decisions on national policy. Is the Axiom station proposed around Earth or Mars? It is proposed, Dan. It's proposed around the Earth. It's actually going to be connected to the ISS to start off with. They're going to put module, and I've made a few episodes about this, but module after module attached to the ISS, using the ISS's life support to maintain it until it can support itself. And eventually, once you have enough modules attached, then it disconnects. But at the same time, the station is occupied even when it's still connected to the ISS. It's going to start off with microgravity research and manufacturing from the moment that the first module gets attached to the ISS. They're going to get going on that. So it's a design that will generate revenue right from the get-go. And that's another reason why I think it's such a good plan. And they do want to put something around the moon, by the way, as well. That's something that they're very interested in. So if radiation, Horkpaw says, if radiation isn't a huge issue, it means that you'd be able to be outside just having a helmet for breathing or just breathing tubes. No, that would not work out. And the reason that Horkpaw would not work, if I'm reading that correctly, sorry. The reason that wouldn't work out is pressure issues. That is what would kill you on Mars. Unless you have a pressurized suit that equalizes the sort of pressure inside as there is outside, or rather gives you a normal pressure on the human body of at least 1/3 of a normal atmosphere, 1/3 of a sea level atmosphere on your body. Unless you have that pressure there, you're going to your blood is going to boil. So you need an actual spacesuit on Mars. It's not a radiation issue, it's a pressure issue. That's the problem with that. However, there is something called the biosuit that I did a video on that uses a reverse mechanical method to apply pressure to your body with a skin-tight suit that does not require a atmospheric pressure, but rather more of a mechanical pressure. And that is much more lightweight, easier to move around in. A prototype has already been made, and if NASA would just invest the money in it, we could actually have a much more effective spacesuit, easier to move around in, more natural, etc., than we have right now. Ooh, I fell behind a little bit. Yeah, low pressure for flesh would kind of suck. You're right, Dan. Dara says, I don't think we need to manage or prescribe society on Mars. We need to ensure it. They will work things out for themselves. Yes, they will. I think that a lot of things, for the people who take the risk, the people who, engage in the difficulties day to day of surviving in such a hostile environment, they should be able to make their own decisions. Mimi says, any ideas for a nickname for SN11? The best I can come up with is legs, as in legs 11. Hopefully SN11 will have better landing legs too. That's a great nickname, Mimi. Legs. We need to make sure that the landing legs, landing pads, etc., is something that works this time on SN11. That was one of the things that did SN10 in. Although the fire was definitely going before the vessel hit the ground, so it seems that the methane leak was going before that. Although it doesn't seem to have happened before that whole flip turn. I really think that flip turn is so violent that it can cause things to happen. I think something came loose in the flip turn, and that may have been what caused the methane leak, because the fire didn't start until that was completed. Hard to say. Make a move to get on Gwen Shotwell's calendar for an interview and ask her about influences for her good eye for modern style, like making the starships coming internal 304 SS walls metamorphose to take on a sleek, efficient Falcon capsules Sylvette style. That's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to get on Gwen's calendar. Of course, I'd be one of a billion at this point, but who knows? With the people I'm interviewing, these people know people. So eventually, I think that I could get an opportunity to do that. Gwen would be a fantastic individual to interview. She's an amazing person. Alien Zookeeper, if we don't fix and hold our government responsible, we'll never have good government. It worked in the past. We keep shooting ourselves in the foot so that the oligarchs stay in power. Yeah, it's all about the money, Alien Zookeeper. It really is. If you don't have incredible amounts of money and the friends, the buddies who are going to give you the money in order to be able to run for office and to be successful, it's just not going to work. And so as a result, you're always going to have rich and powerful people pulling the strings because of that. Whoops. Anyway, made my pictures even more messed up than they already are. Okay, let's see. 1000% agree, says Jade Finstein, a bit behind live on the stream. And comment was about politician-powered rockets. Hello, Tyra Anasazi. Wow, yes, it has been a long time since I've seen you. Thank you so much, or Tyra Anasazi, for showing up. I know that you are also in Australia. Thank you so much for showing up. Got the name right. Suit makes sense. No problem, Horkpaw. Once again, it's when I was younger, I actually thought that, yeah, why can't we make that work? Sometimes Mars gets up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Why do we really need the spacesuit? It's the pressure issues. That's what would kill us, and in a very awful way, actually. One thing, by the way, that makes Titan more doable is that even though the atmosphere is kind of poisonous to us, obviously, the pressure, if you had a tear in your suit, you could actually, it wouldn't be as much of a race against time to save your life. You would have some time to repair it without having any kind of decompression issues on Titan because of the density of the atmosphere. That would make a big difference. Cool Daddy, marveling at the remarkable high definition images from Perseverance, tried to imagine how awe-inspiring the views from the floors of the Valles Marineris must appear. Just imagine the 360-degree panoramic. Yeah, Cool Daddy. That's something that I think about a lot. I think, how excited would the average person become if they knew what Mars really looks like? The most magnificent places on Mars, the most alien, remarkable things. And we have nothing like it here on Earth. The pictures we see now, they look like something out of New Mexico or Arizona or something, minus the plants. We expect some old prospector to come walking by at some point. I mean, it's neat. It's really cool. And I think it's, beautiful, but it's not as exciting to the average person as seeing cliffs towering above the rover just a few kilometers away. And, because I lived, within about 15 kilometers from or 20 kilometers from the top of Pikes Peak, which is only about 4,500 meters tall. And it was huge. It was a massive thing. The cliff walls of the Valles Marineris would make that look like an anthill. It would be an incredible thing to see. And we keep shying away from it. We keep going with the safe route instead of the bold route. We need to take a chance. We need to actually, especially now that we've got a really good landing system down with our rovers, we need to put something down in that valley. We would love it. I think people would just be blown away by it. Phil James says, is Starship landing on Mars really viable? The amount of dust kicked up on a concrete pad was bad enough. Yeah, Phil, I talk about that a lot. I call it the suicide dive, etc. Decelerating that much mass on Mars, especially as fast as the Starship is going to be plummeting towards the planet, is going to kick up a tremendous amount of debris, if you're going to stop it. Is that debris going to cause damage? It could. Yeah. I still tend to think, I still want to look for other options. I still want to look at options of putting the Starship into orbit and then going down with smaller landing craft, that kind of thing. It's still something that I've argued for, actually, for a long time on this channel, is to use the Starship to get us to Mars orbit and then going down in something else. If you get a leak in your pressure suit, just slap some flex tape on it. Yeah, that's true, but you need to do it in a great big hurry. Whereas with the biosuit, the reverse pressure, actually, you've got a lot more time in order to be able to do it. So it's not quite as panicky of a situation, because trying to repair your suit while the seconds are ticking away could be a scary thing. So finding a different way to deal with that would work out. Dust kick-up sounds like problem. More high tensile fabrics placed from orbit to try to keep that honest. That's interesting. Interesting way of dealing with it. Have a pad built in advance with automation. Yes, Timothy, that's a good idea. And we actually have robots right now that are designed to go down and burn and melt the surface of the regolith to make a flat concrete-like landing pad. I think that could definitely be done. I think that's something that should really be seriously considered. Progressive shocks, massive dynamics, scaled up Baja buggy types. Fan of SpaceX teaming up with Gabriel Shocks off-road division. Boy, that's interesting. I'll have to look that up, Ricker. Progressive shocks, that's a first one on me. Anasazi says, whenever I see the Starship flip, I try to imagine what being a passenger would be like. I think it'd be awful. And that's with Earth's atmosphere, reducing the speed to about 250 kilometers an hour, and about 2 seconds worth of deceleration is what SN10 went through. That's about 3 Gs worth of force. If you had to decelerate from a much higher velocity, the G's would be more 5, 6. You'd black out at the very least, and quite possibly die from that many Gs. Fighter pilots can take huge numbers of Gs, but once again, not everybody that's going to Mars is going to be a fighter pilot. So yeah, it would be a very tough thing to be a passenger on something like that. Cargo is a lot better, I think. Okay, Glitch. I'm just going to call you Glitch. Bots versus boots. At some point, it's going to be better to land people instead of rovers. I could not agree more. And by the way, geez, we're already running out of time. I apologize, but I have made a commitment to my son, so I'm going to get through these last comments and questions real quick. Horkpaw says, imagine living high on the cliff in the Valles Marineris with an underground home and a huge glass window looking out into the valley. Absolutely, Horkpaw. That's the kind of stuff that's going to make people so excited to live on Mars. If somebody were to send out, a YouTube video of this is my home on Mars and this is my view every morning, people would be like, oh my God, I want to live there. They would be so excited to see something like that. People compare this to living in Antarctica. Antarctica is not going to be anything like that. It would be an amazing thing. So yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Mimi says, could multiple starships be used as a basis for an orbital way station? Sure. I mean, we've talked about using starships as stations in the past. I'm not as big of a fan of it because it kind of gets rid of the whole reusability thing because you're using it as a station instead of a reusable spacecraft. But still, yeah, it's not a bad thing. If I designed the descent system for Curiosity and Perseverance and had it work twice without a demonstrator, I'd be wearing an eye patch and talking in the third person. Those JPL kids who put that together deserve some mad respect for what they've accomplished. Hell yeah, Darth. The Curiosity and the Perseverance both. The fact that we have successfully landed so many rovers on the surface of that planet without a problem for a while now. It's been since the 90s since we've lost a rover or lost a probe. Amazing. Yeah, mad respect for JPL and their accomplishments. And that's why, landing the Starship on Mars, I find it to be such a daunting prospect because Perseverance only weighs 1 ton, not 200 tons, and that's, Starship plus cargo. That's going to be so much more difficult to land that kind of mass on the planet. I don't know. Pretty tough, definitely. Melting the surface, presumably solar power, wouldn't that be a centering temperature would be insanely high? Actually, it uses rocket engines to do it. Look it up sometime. I'm trying to remember the company that makes these things, but the robots actually use rocket engines to melt the surface. Daddy Longlegs. I'm sorry, I'm missing the reference there. Ride Intimidator 305. I expect the flip is similar to that. Yeah, it's something like a crazy roller coaster. We need super long landing legs. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe we do. We need them stronger. That's for sure. Definitely need it. Okay, guys, I hate to be cutting things off so early, but once again, family comes first. I've always felt that. So, this has been a great discussion. If you want to be part of these kinds of discussions, it's all in the description. Being a Patreon supporter only costs, a minimum of $3 a month. It is an easy thing to do. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you can't join Patreon, I understand. Just throw me a like, throw me a subscribe, and I will be very, very grateful. So until we are actually on Mars and we are confronted with this decision as to whether or not we need to terraform this planet in order to make it livable for the long term, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.